It is morning at Lapis Lazuli Academy when Tiara Rose is suddenly approached by her friends. They express how sad they are about graduation tomorrow, knowing they won't be able to see her as often anymore. With gentle confidence, Tiara Rose reassures them that she will always remain in the kingdom, and there will be many chances to meet as she is destined to become its queen. The girls immediately brighten and excitedly ask when she will marry Prince Heart Knights. Tiara Rose explains that after graduation, she will undergo a year of bridal training before finally marrying Heart Knights in a grand cathedral ceremony. She tells them that, as the future queen, she will do her best to live up to everyone's expectations. Afterwards, she heads to her classroom, where she spots Heart Knights inside. However, something feels off as his expression is unusually grim, making her wonder if something troubling has happened. Before she can approach him, Akari suddenly rushes in and throws herself into his arms. He catches her and his expression suddenly shifts to a fond one. Aware that Tiara Rose is watching, Akari turns and gives her a wicked smirk. Tiara Rose freezes, staring at the two of them in disbelief. At that moment, a flood of memories crashes into her. She suddenly remembers that she is not truly Tiara Rose, but an ordinary girl who loves playing Otomi games. In her previous life, she had cleared Heart Knight's route as the player character Akari. The shock is too much for her to handle. Overwhelmed by the realization, she faints on the spot. In her thoughts, she realizes that she is the villainess instead of the heroine. When she finally awakens, she finds herself lying in a clinic bed with Heart Knights seated beside her. He stiffly informs her that he has already arranged a carriage to take her home. Tiara Rose looks at him in surprise. She remembers that in the game, Heart Knights is the main love interest Akari must win over to achieve the best ending. However, his next words quickly shatter that illusion. Heart Knights coldly remarks that it is unusual for her to suddenly faint and asks if it was merely a ploy to get his attention due to her jealousy toward Akari. His detached tone makes Tiara Rose realize that the real Heart Knights is nothing like the kind and devoted character she remembered from the game. He then adds that although he is technically her fiancé, he will not be able to escort her to the graduation party. Tiara Rose stiffly accepts his apology, but once he leaves, her face turns pale. She knows how humiliating it will be to attend the party alone with her status. More importantly, she knows exactly what will happen next because she has already played this game countless times. Her mind drifts back to the story's premise, where Akari enrolled in the academy thanks to her rare and powerful magic known as the Holy Prayer. Eventually, Akari gains Heart Knight's attention, and once you start winning him over in the game, he begins showering Akari with affection. Tiara Rose recalls how their romance develops through a series of cutscenes, all leading to a happy ending with a grand cathedral wedding. As the carriage carries her back to her manor, Tiara Rose feels sick at the thought of having been reborn as the villainess. She knows that her character treated Akari harshly throughout the story, and that by the time of the graduation ball, she is meant to be condemned for her bullying. In the game, Akari wins while Tiara Rose is dragged away and her engagement to Heart Knights is publicly broken. She doesn't feel she has done anything especially cruel since becoming Tiara Rose, so she quietly hopes that things will not end as harshly as they did in the game. Still, she knows there is no happy ending waiting for her, and that she will never be chosen by anyone due to her reputation as a villainess. When she arrives at the manor, she is greeted by one of the maids, Fellini. As she steps inside, she is surprised to find her parents eagerly waiting for her return. They happily explain that they wanted to give her new accessories for her upcoming wedding and enjoy some sweets together before she begins her bridal training, which will start after the party. Her father, Schnaz, admits that he wants to enjoy more sweets with her because he will miss her dearly, but says he truly wants Tiara Rose to be happy with Heart Knights. Tiara Rose smiles at her parents, cherishing their kindness. From a young age, she had always known she would one day wear the crown, so she had trained her entire life for that role. Schnaz had been especially strict with her upbringing, determined to raise her into a capable and dignified lady. As a result, Tiara Rose herself became strict as well, often scolding Heart Knights whenever she felt he behaved inappropriately. Though it may have seemed harsh, she did it out of love, wanting him to become a better man worthy of the crown. Unfortunately, he never saw it that way, and instead came to view her as cruel. For a moment, she considers skipping the graduation party, but immediately scolds herself, since it would be disgraceful for someone of her status not to attend. So she decides to accept her fate for the sake of her parents. Elsewhere, Aquastide activates his magic, wishing for a different future for Tiara Rose. On the day of the graduation party, Tiara Rose's friends complain about Akari's behavior. They think she's being disrespectful for constantly staying by Heart Knight's side despite Tiara Rose's presence. They assure Tiara Rose that they will always remain by her side, and she thanks them for their loyalty. Once they leave her alone in the room, Tiara Rose begins to tremble. Fellini approaches her and suggests calling Schnaz to escort her, but Tiara Rose insists that she will be fine on her own. She doesn't want to trouble her father over this event, even though she understands Fellini's concern. Schnoz would surely be surprised if he saw her enter the party without an escort. Still worried, Fellini tries to cheer her up by wheeling a table full of sweets for her to enjoy. Tiara Rose's eyes light up at the sight. She takes a biscuit and immediately feels better. Remembering how she loved sweets and baking in her past life, she is thankful that her hobbies had carried over into her life as Tiara Rose. She smiles at the spread as Fellini admits that she simply wanted to make her smile before the party began. Just then, Akari rushes in to check on her, and the two girls exchange polite greetings. Tiara Rose observes Akari and notices how stunning she looks, dressed in a fine gown and luxurious jewelry, everything befitting the heroine of the game. Akari expresses how worried both she and Heart Knights were when Tiara Rose collapsed yesterday. Moments later, Heart Knights himself enters and walks over to them. Tiara Rose greets him politely as he explains Akari's concern for her well-being. He asks whether Tiara Rose still plans to attend the party. She confirms that she will, since she is feeling better, though she still has some preparations to finish. Understanding that she needs privacy, Heart Knights and Akari leave the room to head to the party as Tiara Rose prepares herself. A short while later, Tiara Rose stands before the grand doors leading to the party hall. She knows that once she steps inside, the condemnation event will finally begin. The guards open the doors and announce her arrival. Gasps ripple through the guests, surprised to see her enter alone, while Heart Knight stands at Akari's side, ready to start the event. Tiara Rose looks at the couple standing before her as Heart Knights begins his announcement, declaring that he's breaking off his engagement with her. Shaw's gasps and steps forward to protest, but stops when Tiara Rose quietly signals him to stay back. Forcing herself to remain composed, Tiara Rose asks Heart Knights for his reason, stating that she does not deserve to be humiliated in such a public manner. He scoffs at her ignorance, stating that she should know the reason herself. She meets his gaze and says that if he had intended to take another consort, he should have followed proper procedure instead of disgracing her before everyone. Heart Knights defends himself, accusing Tiara Rose of treating Akari cruelly after learning that she came from the countryside. Standing her ground, Tiara Rose replies that she was only strict with Akari because she was unfamiliar with the kingdom's laws and customs. She simply did her duty and thought she taught her their ways. Heart Knights counters that Tiara Rose did more than simply teach her. He accuses her of forcing Akari to kneel when greeting him and of stopping her from dancing with him at previous parties. Keeping her voice steady, Tiara Rose explains that it is customary for a prince to be bowed to. As for the dancing, she had intervened because Akari danced with him more than twice in a single night, a privilege reserved only for the crown prince's fiancé, which was supposed to be her. She coldly remarks that Heart Knights should know the rules of their own kingdom. Her words only anger him further, and he continues to hurl accusations at her. Tiara Rose realizes that no matter how reasonable she is destined to lose this confrontation. So instead of continuing to argue, she calmly states that she will allow the engagement to be broken, since Heart Knight's heart clearly belongs to Akari. Maintaining his authoritative demeanor, Heart Knights announces that his engagement with Tiara Rose is effectively broken, and that he is now engaged to Akari, who will be the new future queen. Tiara Rose tries to steady herself, telling herself that even if her heart is broken, she still has her family and friends. That fragile comfort shatters when Heart Knights declares that Tiara Rose will be banished from the kingdom for having harmed the future queen. Tiara Rose freezes. This punishment is far worse than what happened in the game. If she is banished, she will never see her family or friends again. She was prepared to lose, but she did not expect this kind of ending for herself. As despair threatens to swallow her whole, Aquasteed suddenly steps forward, telling Heart Knights that he has gone too far. Aquasteed confidently approaches her and asks if Tiara Rose is all right. She looks at him in surprise, but recognizes him at once as the crown prince of the kingdom of Marin Forest and the main love interest of the game's sequel. She remembers seeing his character design and instantly falling in love with him. Sadly, she never got the chance to play that game, as she had died before it was released. Aquasteed fixes her with a firm yet gentle gaze and tells her to stand tall, because she is the one in the right in this situation. Heart Knights protests that Tiara Rose must be punished, which only angers Aquasteed further. He declares that everything Heart Knights has said and done is far harsher than anything Tiara Rose has ever done. He sharply criticizes Heart Knights, saying that humiliating Tiara Rose at a celebratory event is disgraceful and unbecoming of a prince. Turning back to Tiara Rose, Aquasteed asks if her engagement has truly been dissolved. When she confirms it, he suddenly kneels before her and proposes, confessing that he has long wished to make her his wife. Tiara Rose is stunned by his sudden declaration. Noticing her shock, Aquasteed gently tells her that she is free to take her time. He then kisses her hand, leaving everyone in the room speechless. Tiara Rose smiles softly and thanks him for making her feel valued. No longer the center of attention, Akari steps forward in protest. She insists that Tiara Rose does not deserve a happy ending because of her supposed cruelty. Clutching Aquasteed's arm, she demands that he side with her. Tiara Rose urgently warns Akari not to touch a prince of a neighboring kingdom so casually, but Akari refuses to listen. Aquasteed pulls his arm away and gives Tiara Rose a small smile for her consideration. Then he turns a cold glare on Akari and declares that she has disrespected him by overstepping her bounds, ordering her to be removed at once. Akari is dragged out of the hall, stunning everyone present. Aquasteed returns his attention to Tiara Rose, apologizing for the disturbance and promising that he will always come to her rescue. Tiara Rose gazes at him in disbelief. With Aquasteed's involvement, the story has already changed, and now she has no idea what the future will hold. During the carriage ride back to her home, Tiara Rose couldn't help but reflect on everything that had just happened. Only moments ago, her engagement had been broken off, and she was supposed to receive the game's bad ending. Yet Aquasteed's sudden appearance had changed everything. His proposal still left her in shock, as she could hardly fathom how the main character of the sequel game could fall in love with the villainess. She steals a brief glance at him, and when he notices, his smile softens even more. Embarrassed, she quickly looks away and apologizes. Tiara Rose admits that she is still surprised Aquasteed would ask her to be his consort when there are so many noble ladies vying for his attention. Her words seem to brighten him. He gently asks if he may allow himself to hope. She then remembers that this is not actually the first time they have met. In fact, they had been classmates the year before, though they never had many opportunities to speak. Aquasteed looks thoughtful as he confesses that she had always intrigued him. He recalls watching her from afar whenever she read outside, often accompanied by Fellini, secretly enjoying sweets while absorbed in a novel. He found it endearing how her expressions would change with every page. He even admits that whenever he saw her cry, he felt an overwhelming urge to hold her. Tiara Rose hides her face in embarrassment. Aquasteed gently asks her not to hide from him and apologizes if his actions seemed like spying. He explains that he simply couldn't help himself as his feelings for her slowly deepened. However, knowing she was Heart Knight's fiancé, he never tried to take her away. Instead, he left the country to continue his studies, hoping distance would help him forget her. When he returned for the graduation ball, Heart Knight's announcement shocked him. Realizing the opportunity before him, Aquasteed decided he could no longer remain silent. Tiara Rose thanks him sincerely. In that painful moment, she had felt utterly alone, and his intervention gave her reassurance and strength. Aquasteed admits that even he was surprised by the severity of the punishment announced. Gently gathering a strand of her hair, he presses a soft kiss to it and tells her that if she had truly been banished, he would have taken her away with him without hesitation. Blushing, she admits that it is still hard to believe how deeply he seems to care for her. Aquasteed smiles and assures her that he is serious, then leans in and gently kisses her forehead. When he pulls away, he says he wishes their carriage ride could have lasted longer. He helps her down from the carriage and before leaving, asks her out on a date. Tiara Rose happily agrees, and Aquasteed promises to pick her up in 3 days. Inside the manor, Tiara Rose finds Schnoz fuming over Heart Knights, angry at the humiliation he caused and the disrespect he showed her. Her parents then ask how she plans to respond to Aquasteed's proposal. With her engagement to Heart Knights now broken, marrying Aquasteed is a real possibility, especially since he formally proposed. Tiara Rose lowers her gaze and says that Aquasteed is far too good for her, quietly telling herself that a villainess does not deserve such a happy ending. The next day, Heart Knights attempts to visit Akari, but the guard initially refuses him entry. He insists that he only wishes to confirm something with her, as the events of the previous night left him unsettled. Eventually allowed inside, he is greeted by an overjoyed Akari. She stands to welcome him and complains about how bored she has been since she is no longer permitted to leave. Heart Knights is unsettled by how little she seems to have reflected on what happened. Akari expresses her shock over Aquasteed's sudden proposal and voicing her concern that Aquasteed may be deceiving Tiara Rose. Heart Knights asks whether Tiara Rose had truly done anything wrong. Akari feigns innocence, claiming she was bullied by Tiara Rose, but endured it because Heart Knights was always by her side. When she reaches out to hug him, Heart Knights immediately pushes her away. Confused, Akari assumes Tiara Rose must have said something to him, but he replies that he has not seen her since the party. Akari wonders why Tiara Rose is still part of the story. In her mind, Tiara Rose's role should have ended after the graduation ball. Akari decides to change her approach and asks Heart Knights to cut her punishment short. When she brings up Aquasteed, Heart Knights grows suspicious. Akari insists that she only wishes to save him, arguing that Aquasteed knows nothing about Tiara Rose's true nature. Before Heartmites can respond, a guard returns to inform him that his visitation time is over. Heartmites leaves the room without a word as Akari desperately begs him to stay. Once outside, doubt settles in his chest. For the first time, he wonders if he has made a mistake that can never be undone. Elsewhere, Tiara Rose lies alone in her room, pondering what her future may hold. She knows little about the sequel game, and that uncertainty frightens her. She worries that the true heroine might eventually appear and that, following the original plot, Aquasteed could be swayed by her charm. A soft tap from a stone against her window pulls her from her thoughts. When she looks outside, she is surprised to find Aquasteed standing below, smiling up at her and remarking on how beautiful the moon is tonight. In one smooth motion, he jumps on her balcony and asks if she knows about the Fairy Star Festival, explaining that he wishes to attend it with her. Tiara Rose remembers the Fairy Star Festival as an in-game event where the player attends with the character they are closest to. She tells Aquasteed that the festival is not usually held at this time of year. Undeterred, Aquasteed activates his magic, calling upon the fairies. Noticing her shiver, Aquasteed drapes his coat over her shoulders, insisting he is fine despite her concern. As they take in the cool night air and glowing lights, Aquasteed is suddenly overcome with happiness. He leans closer to her and admits that spending time with her brings him so much joy that it almost feels frightening. Tiara Rose blushes deeply, but her thoughts are interrupted when Aquasteed gently tells her to look up. With no clouds hindering their view, they see a breathtaking sky filled with countless stars, and even a few shooting across the heavens. Entranced by the magical sight, Tiara Rose thanks him. Aquasteed gently gathers a strand of her hair in his fingers and smiles, telling her that he is glad she enjoyed the evening. As Tiara Rose meets his gaze, she feels herself slowly falling in love with him. The following day, Alexander and Heartmites share a meal together. Alexander reveals that he is aware Heartmites disobeyed his orders and visited Akari, and he asks whether the visit yielded anything of value. Heartmites answers stiffly, admitting that he realized he had believed Akari too easily and should have listened to Tiara Rose instead. Alexander tells him that Tiara Rose had expressed the same sentiment. He explains that he went to see her to apologize for Heartmites' injustice, but she insisted she did not blame Heartmites at all. She even admitted that she should have communicated with him more openly. Heartmites is filled with regret as memories of his time with Tiara Rose resurface. He recalls how often she scolded him while they were growing up. Alexander gently reasons that Tiara Rose did so because she genuinely cared for the kingdom and for him, the person who would eventually wear the crown. Heartmites finally admits that he understands this now, realizing too late that Tiara Rose had always been loyal to him and that he repaid that loyalty by trampling over it. Alexander reminds him that no matter how deeply he regrets his actions, the engagement to Tiara Rose has already been dissolved. Meanwhile, Tiara Rose asks Fellini for advice on which dress she should wear for her date with Aquasteed. Fellini smiles warmly, noting how happy and excited Tiara Rose looks for her first date. That observation makes Tiara Rose realize that this truly is her first date. She sits before the mirror as Fellini fixes her hair with an ornate coral hairpiece. Fellini explains that it comes from Aquasteed's homeland and suggests that wearing it might please him. It isn't long before Aquasteed's carriage arrives. Tiara Rose lets her feet carry her forward, her heart fluttering as she goes to meet him. During the ride, she chats easily with Aquasteed until they arrive at a breathtaking flower field. They settle beneath a tree for a quiet picnic, where Tiara Rose proudly presents a basket of baked goods she prepared herself. Aquasteed gratefully accepts one of the sweets and, after tasting it, admits that it is delicious. His praise makes Tiara Rose beam. She tells him how much she loves eating and baking sweets, explaining that the sweets she brought are her favorites, especially when paired with tea, cocoa, and various other drinks. She even confesses that once, while reading a novel, she accidentally ate an entire basket by herself. The incident had caused her to get scolded by her maid. Aquasteed chuckles at her story, finding her quirks utterly endearing. Listening to her talk feels so natural that he thinks he would do so forever. He reaches for another sweet, and after eating it, he picks one more and gently offers it to Tiara Rose. Though nervous, she allows him to feed her. He then slips an arm around her waist and asks if he may call her Tiara as a nickname. When she gives her permission, his face lights up, and he insists that she call him Aqua in return. And she is even more startled when Aquasteed pulls her into a hug. As he shares how happy he is, Tiara Rose becomes flustered by her racing heart, but she slowly calms when she hears Aquasteed's own heartbeat also drumming madly. She pulls back and hides her face in her hands. Aquasteed laughs softly and apologizes, teasing that she looked as though she had been waiting for a kiss. He quickly adds that he wants to take things slowly before going any further. To ease the moment, he asks if she would feed him a cookie. She agrees, carefully choosing one he hasn't tried yet. After tasting it, he remarks that her sweets have a gentle, comforting flavor, causing her to turn away to hide her blush. His gaze then falls on her hair ornament because of their position, and he asks aloud if wearing it means he has a chance with her. Tiara Rose turns back and gives him a warm, sincere smile. Taking that as his answer, Aquastide leans against her. Though Tiara Rose still worries about the uncertainty of her future, she allows herself to savor this small moment of happiness. When she returns home, she tells her father that she wishes to accept Aquastide's proposal. Though Shanaz admits it pains him to see her go, he agrees, saying her happiness matters more than anything else. Before long, Tiara Rose finds herself at Aquastide's castle, where she meets his attendant, Elliot. As Elliot escorts her to Aquastide, they chat about their respective countries, particularly the accessories each kingdom is known for. Suddenly, Heart Knights appears, freezing in shock when he sees her. Realizing she is there to visit Aquastide, he lowers his gaze. He bows deeply and apologizes for his actions at the graduation party. Fixing him with a stern look, she reminds him that royalty should not bow so easily. Heart Knights smiles faintly, remarking that Tiara Rose has always been the one to keep him in check. He thanks her for everything. Seeing the gentleness in his expression, Tiara Rose feels relieved. She realizes that Heart Knights truly understands now, and that at his core he is not a bad person. As he steps closer, about to reach for her, she is suddenly pulled into Aquastide's embrace. Aquastide fixes Heart Knights with a sharp glare and calmly asks what he intends to do with Tiara Rose. Before Aquastide ever took an interest in Tiara Rose, he had transferred to Lapis Lazuli Academy to complete his studies. Prior to that, he spent years traveling the world to broaden his knowledge. As he walked through the academy halls, he quickly became the center of attention for many of the female students. He even entertained them slightly by smiling their way. Elliot was quick to point out his popularity one day. Catching up to him, Elliot remarked that it had only been a few days since his arrival, yet Aquastide had already gained a sizable fan club that seemed to be growing in size each day. Aquastide chose to ignore the attention and instead asked Elliot about the book he had requested. Elliot confirmed that there were several copies available in the library, and the two of them headed there together. Along the way, Elliot casually asked if Aquastide had found this suitable bride, mentioning that Aquastide had already received numerous invitations, all of which he had declined. Aquastide simply replied that his current priority was gaining as much knowledge as possible. Once inside the library, Aquastide caught sight of Tiara Rose through the window outside. For some reason he couldn't explain, watching her smile to herself made his heart race. He recognized her because that was not actually the first time he had noticed her. He remembered meeting her at the welcoming party held in his honor. It was there that he had also met Heart Knights, who introduced Tiara Rose as his fiancé. Even then, Aquastide had noticed how strikingly beautiful Tiara Rose was, as well as how diligently she had refined her etiquette and manners. She already carried herself as someone fit to stand beside a future ruler. Since that day, he began noticing her more often in the halls, always composed and mindful of her duties, lending a hand to fellow students. He found comfort in knowing there was someone else as dedicated as he was, working toward the same goal of one day being worthy of the crown. What truly captured his attention, however, were the small, unguarded moments. Whenever she was served sweets or when a scene in one of her novels moved her, her expressions would change in the most genuine and endearing ways. Before he realized it, Aquastide found himself watching her every day from his seat in the library. Elliot eventually noticed. Seeing how Aquastide's gaze always followed Tiara Rose, he realized that Aquastide's frequent visits to the library were no longer for reading, but to quietly watch Tiara Rose from afar. He hinted at his observation to Aquastide, who merely agreed with him. Suddenly, rain began to fall and Tiara Rose and Fellini prepared to leave. Aquastide shocked Elliot that day by using magic to ensure Tiara Rose's spot remained dry so she could continue enjoying her picnic. Elliot made sure to question his use of magic, and Aquastide reasoned that it was to make sure Tiara Rose's book wouldn't get wet. However, he knew the real reason was that he had fallen in love with her. His magic had caused her to smile that day because she had seen a beautiful rainbow, something he had long wanted to do for her. The following days were spent resisting the urge to reach out and hold her. He was in love with her, but because she was Heart Knight's fiancé, he resisted for her sake. Elliot had suggested talking with Tiara Rose, but Aquastide refused, believing it would be unbecoming of him to flirt with another man's fiancé. After that, he settled on praying for her happiness. When he walked into their classroom one day, he was shocked to see Heart Knights hugging a carry right in front of Tiara Rose. Watching Tiara Rose faint that day had been terrifying. He was the first to react immediately. He gathered her in his arms and asked the others to ready the infirmary. He sat by her infirmary bed, wondering what had caused such a strong negative reaction, since Tiara Rose barely showed any weakness. He considered whether it was a Carrie's presence and her sudden closeness to Heart Knights. If that were the case, he mulled over the possibility of Heart Knights leaving Tiara Rose for a carry, since there was a rumor suggesting it might happen. He decided that if that were to happen, he would be the one to come to her rescue. However, just before he could firm his resolve, Heart Knights entered the infirmary and thanked him for watching over Tiara Rose while he was away. Heart Knights took his seat by her bedside, making Aquasteed realize that it was Heart Knight's duty to stay by her side, not his. He left them alone and looked down at his hands. That had been the first time he had ever held the girl he loved. He realized that tomorrow would mark the end of his time at the academy as they were set to graduate. However, during the graduation ball, he witnessed Heart Knights not only ridicule Tiara Rose, but also call off his engagement with her. Fury welled up inside him, and he almost let his magic run wild that evening. He quickly calmed himself, and after paying his respects to the king, he stepped between Tiara Rose and Heart Knights, commanding him to stop. He had finally made up his mind to take action and to take what he wanted instead of gazing at Tiara Rose from afar. He proposed to her then and there. After the party, he wrote to his father and had Elliot send the message through magic. The letter transformed into a bird meant to deliver his message as quickly and safely as possible. The letter informed his father that he would be bringing Tiara Rose to his kingdom as his fiancé. Elliot admitted that he had been worried about Aquasteed, but seeing that he had finally taken a fiancé, he felt he could rest at ease, even if the proposal was rushed and dramatic. Eventually, Tiara Rose agreed to his proposal. At present, Elliot informs him that Tiara Rose has arrived to visit him. The fact that she had come all this way to see him fills him with excitement, though Elliot reminds him that he still has a mountain of paperwork to finish before he can meet her. Once he finishes with his paperwork, he hurries through the halls in search of her, only to see Heart Knights speaking to her in a familiar manner. He observes them for a bit, slightly put off that Heart Knights can speak to her as if nothing had happened. As Heart Knights reaches out to touch her, Aquasteed pulls Tiara Rose close to himself, demanding to know what Heart Knights intends to do with her and firmly reminding him that Tiara Rose is now his fiancée. Tiara Rose's heart swells at being called his fiancé, and the two embrace in greeting. Aquasteed then turns his attention back to Heart Knights, who is frozen in shock at how quickly their engagement has been made official. He hadn't been informed and thought he could still make amends with Tiara Rose. Realizing he had nearly acted out of line, Heart Knights bows an apology, and Aquasteed decides to overlook his actions. Aquasteed thanks Tiara Rose for coming all that way and leads her off to show her around the castle, leaving Heart Knights behind in regret over his loss. As they walk the castle grounds, Tiara Rose tries to tell him something, but Aquasteed stops her, telling her there is no need to explain, as he will always be there to protect her. Hearing him call her his fiancée makes Tiara Rose's heart bloom with affection. Aquasteed cups both of her hands and thanks her for accepting his proposal. In turn, she expresses her gratitude to him for saving her and loving her. When they arrive at the Rose Garden, Tiara Rose is thrilled by the sight of the beautiful tea party laid out just for them. She begins to feel as though she is dreaming, being able to enjoy such a perfect day with Aquasteed. It is then that she recalls how strawberries are a specialty of the Marin Forest Kingdom. She stops herself before she can ramble on further, realizing that she has been thinking about her past life again. Aquasteed doesn't seem to mind in the slightest and encourages her to eat as much as she wants. They enjoy the spread together, and after Tiara Rose finishes a plate of food, Elliot formally reintroduces himself as Aquasteed's attendant. He tells Tiara Rose and Fellini that he doesn't have a last name because he isn't a noble, but he has served Aquasteed for a very long time. Fellini bows politely and introduces herself as a maid who serves Tiara Rose's family, explaining that she had been appointed as Tiara Rose's personal maid just the year before. Tiara Rose adds that Fellini had actually grown up with her and that she views her as an older sister. Fellini then announces that she wishes to continue serving Tiara Rose for the foreseeable future. Even if Tiara Rose were to remain in Marin Forest, Fellini wishes to follow her and stay by her side. The day is spent with the four of them enjoying one another's company, and Tiara Rose finds herself overwhelmed with happiness. Meanwhile, Akari is bored out of her mind as she remains confined to her room under detention. She complains to herself that Heart Knights hasn't even come to visit her and fumes over the fact that Tiara Rose is still around. She admits that she has also fallen in love with Aquasteed and believes that she deserves him because she is the heroine of this world. An idea suddenly comes to her, and she smiles to herself. Back with Tiara Rose, the tea party has just come to an end when Aquasteed leads her to a more secluded area of the garden. Once they are seated, he gently pulls her closer and admits that he wants some private time with her. He apologizes for having forced his proposal on her before and tells her that he wants to ask her again properly. Cupping her face with both hands, he repeats his proposal. This time, Tiara Rose accepts without even a moment of hesitation. Overcome with joy, Aquasteed pulls her into a tight embrace and confesses that he is in love with her. He pulls back slightly so they can kiss properly, marking Tiara Rose's first kiss. Her heart swells with happiness as Aquastea peppers her face with affectionate kisses, finally ending with one more kiss on her lips. He hugs her once more and apologizes for kissing her despite having promised to wait. Though she feels embarrassed, Tiara Rose decides to savor the moment, realizing that she has never felt happier. She melts into his hug, not wanting this moment to end. Suddenly, they are interrupted when a brilliant light erupts somewhere within the castle grounds. Even Heart Knights can see it from inside the castle. Guards and attendants rush toward Aquastea and Tiara Rose, trying to determine the source of the light. Aquastea wonders if it's some sort of magic because he has never seen something like this occur. Tiara Rose immediately recognizes it as the heroine's magic called the Holy Prayer. The spell is incredibly powerful, capable of cleansing lands of impurities, corruption, and ailments that could cause a kingdom's downfall. Tiara Rose had almost forgotten about the spell, as Akari had never used it before. When the light finally fades, Elliot takes several guards with him to investigate the area. Meanwhile, Tiara Rose is advised to remain by Aquastea's side. Fellini tries to reassure her that she has nothing to worry about, and Tiara Rose shakily agrees, though worry clouds her mind. Her thoughts linger on the spell. She knows that every kingdom in this world seeks the power of holy prayer, which is why Akari is the central figure of the story. A quiet worry settles in her heart that Aquastea might one day desire that power as well, and that would cause him to leave her. Though she does not voice her fears, Aquastea gently reassures her, promising that he will always protect her. After the strange light, Aquastea and Tiara Rose sit together having tea while awaiting further news about the incident. Tiara Rose is deeply worried about what might happen once Aquastea learns about the Holy Prayer. She fears that now that they are moving into the events of the sequel, Akari might be the one destined to stand by Aquastea's side after all. Soon, a guard approaches them and reports that the strange light was caused by malfunctioning magical equipment. Fellini sighs in relief, grateful that the incident isn't anything serious. Aquastea offers to escort Tiara Rose home himself. Tiara Rose accepts his offer, but inwardly she wishes she could stay by his side, since she is worried about how the game's events might unfold from here. Later that evening, Elliot visits Aquastea in his study. He informs Aquastea that Akari has recently awakened the ability to use the Holy Prayer. The revelation shocks Aquastea as Akari is the last person he would have expected to possess such power. Elliot acknowledges how dangerous this situation is, since nearly every nation covets the Holy Prayer. According to legend, the power is strong enough to bring peace to the Housing Kingdom. Aquastea recognizes this reality, even noting that many kingdoms would do anything to secure the Holy Prayer, including arranging marriages to ensure it remains within their royal bloodline. Elliot predicts that the Lapis Lazuli Kingdom will likely pressure Heart Knights to marry Akari. However, Aquastea admits that he too wants that power for Marin Forest, and that means he wants Akari as well. 10 days have passed since the light incident, yet Tiara Rose's unease has not faded. No official news has been released regarding the Holy Prayer. Tiara Rose knows that Schnoz might have information, but she doesn't want to trouble him by asking. What troubles her even more is that she hasn't seen Aquastea since that day. She fears that news of the Holy Prayer has already reached him, and that his feelings or plans may have changed because of it. Fellini approaches her and tells her that they can depart from Marin Forest Kingdom at any time. She reassures Tiara Rose that wherever she goes, Fellini will follow and continue to serve her. Meanwhile, Akari is still under house arrest and growing increasingly bored while waiting for Aquastea to come rescue her. She had believed that after revealing her power, he would come for her much sooner, yet 2 weeks have already passed. Suddenly, a knock sounds at her door. The next day, Tiara Rose prepares sweets for Aquastea, knowing that he will be visiting her today. As she delicately decorates her pie, she reassures herself that everything is fine, especially since Schnoz has not mentioned anything concerning it. After finishing her preparations, she hopes that Aquastea will enjoy the pies and tarts she made for him. When he arrives, he immediately apologizes for being so busy lately. They sit together for tea and snacks, and Aquastea tells her that preparations for an engagement have been finalized. But when he mentions Akari's name in the same breath, Tiara Rose freezes in shock. Fear grips her heart as she worries that history is repeating itself and that Akari will once again take Aquastea away from her. Aquastea then reveals that Akari is now formally engaged to Heart Knights. Tiara Rose suddenly bursts into tears as she admits that she had been terrified Aquastea was going to marry Akari instead. Aquastea looks genuinely surprised, then gently reassures her that Tiara Rose is the only woman he wishes to take as his wife. Seeing her tears, he leans in to kiss them away before capturing her lips in a tender kiss. When he pulls back, he tells her that his intention is to bring her back with him to Marin Forest. To seal his promise, he kisses her deeply once more, and for a moment, all of Tiara Rose's worries fade. Later that night, as Tiara Rose sleeps, a sudden brilliant light fills her room. She wakes up, startled by its intensity, and sees Akari materialize before her. Akari asks calmly whether Tiara Rose used to be a player of the game. Tiara Rose is stunned, realizing that Akari also knows this world is based on a game. In that moment, she understands that Akari must be another reincarnated player. Akari explains that she had suspected Tiara Rose was a player because she was the only one who behaved differently from the original story. She then blames Tiara Rose for the disastrous ending. Tiara Rose tries to feign ignorance, pretending she doesn't understand what Akari means, but Akari easily sees through her. Akari continues, admitting that her original plan had simply been to secure her happy ending with Heart Knights. However, when Aquasteed, her favorite character from the sequel, suddenly appeared, she changed her mind and decided she wanted to marry him instead. She then accuses Tiara Rose of knowing nothing about the sequel or its adorable heroine. Realizing she has been exposed, Tiara Rose finally admits that she was reincarnated. She explains that she remembers clearing the first game, but nothing beyond that. Akari realizes that Tiara Rose must have died before the sequel was released. Akari begins speaking in a rush as she describes the sequel as the greatest thing she has ever experienced. She then explains that the heroine of the sequel is Isilla, the daughter of a duke, and recounts how Isilla's love story with Aquasteed began. After a moment, Akari reminds Tiara Rose that she possesses the Holy Prayer. Confident, Akari declares that Aquasteed must want her because of that power. She then coldly asks Tiara Rose to break off her engagement with him. Tiara Rose refuses immediately. Akari's expression twists in irritation. She insists that she deserves Aquasteed more because she played the game countless times. Tiara Rose firmly counters that Aquasteed is not just a game character here. Akari merely gives a wicked grin. She raises her hand and releases a small burst of magic. A thin cut appears on Tiara Rose's cheek. With a chilling tone, Akari remarks that she just imagined a scenario where Tiara Rose is injured and forced to call off her engagement. Tiara Rose instinctively backs away in fear. Akari tells her to calm down, claiming she only intends to put her to sleep until she secures her happy ending. Akari unleashes a powerful thunder spell, but before it can strike, a bright protective barrier surrounds her, deflecting the attack. Then familiar arms wrap around Tiara Rose from behind. Aquasteed holds her tightly, relief clear in his voice as he admits he is grateful he arrived in time. Akari stares at him in disbelief as Aquasteed glances at the cut on Tiara Rose's cheek, his expression darkening with guilt. He apologizes for failing to protect her sooner. Suddenly, Shanaz bursts into the room demanding to know what is happening. Aquasteed turns his gaze on Akari and demands an explanation. Desperate, Akari tries to twist the situation in her favor. She claims she is being forced to marry Heart Knights because of her holy prayer and insists she does not want this fate. She begs Aquasteed to save her by taking her to Marin Forest. Shanaz grows furious, accusing Akari of bringing nothing but pain to Tiara Rose. Akari, however, presses on, insisting that Aquasteed should take her instead because her power would bring prosperity to his kingdom. Tiara Rose clings to Aquasteed, her heart aching with uncertainty. Aquasteed acknowledges that the holy prayer could indeed benefit Marin Forest, but he firmly declares that his kingdom can prosper without Akari's power. Gently, he lifts Tiara Rose into his arms. In a clear, unwavering voice, he states that Tiara Rose is the only woman he wants as his wife. Akari collapses to her knees, unable to accept that she has lost. Moments later, guards arrive and bind her in magical restraints before leading her away. Even after confirming that Tiara Rose is physically safe, Aquasteed continues to carry her, telling her that after everything she endured, she is allowed to rely on him more. Tiara Rose buries her face against his chest, snuggling closer and softly thanking him for saving her. The next day, Akari is relocated to a remote manor. Her new room is sealed with powerful magic that restricts her abilities, allowing only minor spells, nowhere near enough for her to escape. For a moment, she wishes this were a game where a prince would come to save her. But as she reflects, she bitterly realizes that this is a game, yet nothing is going her way. Suddenly, she hears a knock, and Heart Knights enters. She rises from her seat and approaches him with a cheerful smile, urging him to stay and have tea with her. Although he's clearly hesitant, he eventually agrees and sits across from her. Heart Knight speaks first, informing her that the two of them will be getting married. Akari immediately agrees without hesitation. This catches Heart Knights off guard. He had assumed Akari also harbored romantic feelings for Aquasteed. In truth, Akari does love both of them. If she could, she would keep them both. But aloud, she simply repeats that Heart Knights is the one she loves. Her words visibly ease his heart. They finish their tea together, and he leaves soon after, leaving Akari to her thoughts. Meanwhile, Tiara Rose is preparing to depart for Marin Forest. Standing before her parents, she and Aquastide formally bid them goodbye, promising to keep each other happy. When attendants announce that the carriage is ready, Tiara Rose lingers just a little longer. She reassures her parents that she will return briefly after completing her bridal training. Then she embraces her mother, cherishing the last moments she will have with them before beginning her new life. Shanaz formally requests that Fellini continue serving Tiara Rose, a role Fellini gladly accepts without hesitation. Taking Aquastide's hand, Tiara Rose steps into the carriage beside him. As the vehicle begins to move, she hesitantly asks whether fairies truly exist in his kingdom. Aquastide smiles confidently and assures her that they do, and that the fairies will surely bless her. Tiara Rose is happy, but lowers her gaze and steels herself. Deciding she wants to try being just a little more demanding with him, she leans closer. But her nerves betray her before she can act further. Aquastide only finds this endearing. But before their moment can deepen, a shimmering magical letter suddenly materializes in front of them. Aquastide notices it is a letter from Akari, so he decides to take it first. Akari has written that she is giving up on pursuing Aquastide and has resolved to find happiness with Heartmites instead. He hands the letter to Tiara Rose, deeming it safe for her. Tiara Rose notices that at the bottom there are Japanese characters. They warn that the sequel's heroine will appear and Akari will be furious if Tiara Rose loses to her. She asks Aquastide if she may keep the letter, explaining that she wants to reread it whenever she feels uncertain or discouraged. With quiet determination, she thinks to herself that she will not lose, especially not to a girl she hasn't even met yet. High above, two unknown figures watch the carriage from the sky, silently observing its journey toward Marin Forest. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss a new episode every week.